Hello everyone, how's it going? I'll switch over from the stream starting soon screen in just a moment. I'm just making sure that all of my audio levels are good. I'm trying a noise gate on my microphone because got some laundry going in the background. I don't want you to hear that. So I'm gonna stop talking and then start talking again. And if you guys could help me out and tell me if it sounds weird when I come in, let me know. Okay, so this is me checking. You heard okay, so this is me checking, right? All good? Yep. Okay, cool. Good. Glad that it sounds good. And I'm gonna turn the music down once I get going, but this is just while I finalize my setup. Yes, it will be saved, and it's okay to ask questions, but I might not get to them. I'm gonna focus on what I'm presenting in the beginning, and then at the end, I'll take like a Q&A, and you can ask all your questions then. I'll stick around for the Q&A as long as possible. The Q&A could potentially be very long if I get through all this stuff really fast. Ooh, skipping this song. Okay, cool. All right, I'm about ready. Cool. Okay, hello. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Hello, hi. I need to fix my chat really quick. There we go. So I'm just gonna fade this music out and we're gonna get started. All right, so Procreate, hey, the Procreate, how's it going? That's so cool. All right, so you just bought my brushes. Thank you. That's really awesome. And the animation looks good. Thank you so much. Okay, so for those of you who do not know me, I know that there's some people from my Discord, and I'm glad to see familiar faces in the chat. It's good to see you. My name is Michael Relth. Actually, let me tell you what this whole demo is going to be about. So the first half of this presentation is going to be geared towards all experience levels. I said that in the description. And it's going to bring you up to speed with techniques and technology. So everything that you, well, not everything that you can do, but everything that I know that you can do in Procreate, as well as a glimpse of sort of what's possible, like what's something that's really difficult that you can do in Procreate with animation. And then the second half of the presentation is very specifically geared towards students and those who are looking to learn more of the basics of animation. So things like timing and spacing, I'll cover all that stuff. So I wanted to have the technical stuff in the beginning for anybody who does have a lot of experience with animation and doesn't need to hear for the 500th time about timing and spacing. So yeah, I will. I'll get into my intro now. My name is Michael Relth. I do illustration and animation, and I've done that freelance for the past 11 years. I mostly do commercial work. I've done some TV show pitches, I've done some music videos, a little bit of biz dev for film, that's more recent, and children's book illustration. I just wrote and illustrated my first children's book. It's called Picture Book by Dog. You can check that out. So yeah, that's what I've been up to, and now that you know kind of what I've been doing for the past 11 years professionally, I'll get into what I've done in Procreate, both just for fun and then also professionally. So let me start off at the first thing I ever animated in Procreate. I'm gonna back out here real quick. It was this guy. I got early access to the beta for Procreate 4, and I animated this guy. And this was done pretty quickly. I don't remember exactly how long it took for me to do this, but I think it was something like, let's see, what was it? Maybe 2 or 3 days before work. Like I would just wake up a little early and just doodle in Procreate. So there's probably not more than 8 hours of work into this to make this whole thing a reality. So that's the first thing I did. And Procreate reached out to me to do a commission, um, which is this piece right here. So aside from some assistance in 3D for the background, just to block out the shapes, this wasn't done entirely in Procreate. When Procreate reached out to me about this, I wanted to do the absolute most that you can do with Procreate. Like I wanted to push it to the limit, kind of. And I've seen a lot of people do animated characters, but I haven't seen anybody do a really elaborate parallaxing background, which was really brain teaser to figure out. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. I posted some of this to my Instagram. Let me go in here really quick. So the first thing I did is I figured out the pencils. I did all this in Procreate. I just sort of drew in the rough background that I wanted to have. And I figured out the pencils using, your usual notation for here's a contact frame, here's a breakdown frame, and so forth. Yeah, so after that, um, I tried doing the background by hand, but it was a nightmare to keep track of all that stuff. So I have some experience with 3D animation. As you can tell, not with modeling and also not with rendering, but with 3D animation. So I figured out a way to make this loop in 3D and act as a guide. I rendered out some line passes and I drew in shadows and these highlights that are coming through, and then I colored it all in After Effects. So this is not rendered out of 3D because I don't know how to do that. It's rendered out of After Effects. And then I brought that all into Procreate, imported an image sequence, and painted every single frame in Procreate, which was really an exercise in patience because painting every frame of a background is kind of like a lot of work. But I enjoyed the final result, so it was kind of worth it. And then, of course, the fun part is painting the characters. So I used my line layer that I animated originally, painted the characters, tweaking things here and there to get better silhouettes. And then I sort of brought all those layers into one Procreate file and put it all together. And then there were some elements where they needed to interact, like the dog with the leaves and the shadow casting on the ground. So I had to paint those individually, frame by frame. And in the end, it turns into something like this. So that's probably the most elaborate thing that I've ever done in Procreate. It was really fun. I learned a lot, and I love the end result. So it was cool. And I would say that this is about as complex as you can really get with Procreate on my iPad with my specs. I'm not sure if the layer limit changes if you have like a faster iPad. I think that would be a Procreate question. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but you can see the maximum layers for this file size is 250, and the layers used is 241. So if I wanted to add more animation to this, or if I wanted to add more elements, I couldn't. It's topped out at about, let's see, 5 elements per frame. So depending on your canvas size, this is sort of like the first technical tip for Procreate. Depending on your canvas size and the amount of frames in your animation, that sort of limits the amount of total layers you can use in your file. So there is sort of a layer limit. And then I'll just show you what I did to build out the girl by herself. So I have my concept art on the side, and I just did her animation, which is a 16 frame loop, painted frame by frame. And you can see even her, I'm breaking her up into different layers just to sort of make my life easier, copying and pasting a bunch of things. And I'll get into that very specifically later about how I do that. But here's her. And then I bring her in, copy her in, and sort of copy her up to all the different frames, and then end up with this final over here. And I did, after I did that, I started working on this. I made this for a tutorial, but I realized that as I was making the tutorial that it was ending up a little bit too specific, and I'm not sure that anyone would want to do exactly the process that I did. So I decided to use this material for this live stream demo right now. Yeah, so those are the three big animated things that I made on Procreate. Everything else has just been more like doodles. So I'm going to show you kind of step by step. If you've never animated anything in Procreate, I'll show you how you do it pretty much. So first thing, we're going to grab a brush and maybe a line. And then we're just going to find where the menu is. And this is very basic. This is just how you get it going. So if you click on the wrench up in the top left, and then you click on this little button right here, it says Animation Assist. And it turns on and this timeline pops up. This is sort of temporal, the temporal panel, I would say. So next up, I usually like to set my frame rate. So I think all the examples I showed were either 12 frames per second or 8 frames. So we're going to set this to 12, or not 55. That's way too many frames per second. And then we're going to add a few layers, and maybe just draw a few circles so you can see how it works, just roughly. So we'll just draw a circle. Great circle, I know. Awesome. And then we'll go to the next layer and draw another circle. And you can see that the circle I just drew, it remains behind when I go to the next layer. And that is because, by default, when you turn on Animation Assist, there is an option called Onion Skins that is on by default. So it is saying that the Onion Skin settings, under the timeline, that it is showing 2 frames. So that'll show 2 frames before and after the frame that you're currently on. I'm going to check chat really quick. Is there FPS? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure everything is running smoothly. Looks like it is. Give me a shout out if anything looks weird or anything. Trying to keep this good. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, so this will show you 2 frames before and 2 frames after. So let's make that. Let's make a couple more frames so you can see that exactly for these 2 frames before and 2 frames after. Onion Skins is incredibly helpful to figure out where your animation is going, to figure out spacing. What I like to turn on is this color secondary frames, and that'll make the frames previous in time red and the frames next in time going forward green. And that helps you when you have like really tight spacing. Like for instance, if I was drawing lines that had to animate that were right next to each other, like getting very close, it can get very confusing if they're all the same color, which line is before and which line is after. You can change the opacity, and then you can change the amount of frames. So here's just 1, here's 2, and of course you can do all the way up to max, where you see all of them. So that is Onion Skins. And then there's this really handy thing. If you like to draw pose to pose, let's say you like to draw one pose and then the next, and you like to time it out. Let's say I want this first pose to actually be 10 frames long. So I can click on it right here, and then I can go over here to the hold duration, and I can make it hold for 9 frames. So that's the original frame plus 9 will give me 10 frames for that. And then let's say I want the same thing for the last one. I'm going to make it hold for 5 frames, sure. And then this one we'll just do 2 frames, 3 frames. I'm changing my mind as I'm doing it. And this one will also do 3 frames. So now you can see we have a sort of I don't know what this animation is, but you can see that they're holding for much longer at the beginning and at the end. Yes, so that is a very handy thing for blocking out your animation. Using this hold duration is super cool. So when you're working with the timeline and with layers in Procreate, it's important to know the way that it works in Procreate. So I drew this little diagram, and basically when you see in your timeline you'll see it moving left to right. So this is earlier in time on the left and later in time in the right. And as it's going left to right in the timeline, it's going bottom to top in the layer palette. So if I'm on my first frame in the timeline on the left, I'll be in the bottom. If I'm on my 16th frame in the timeline on the right, I'll be at the top. So yeah, that's just important to know, and it kind of, helps you keep track of this stuff a little bit better. One thing that I like a lot is that this program, you can integrate it pretty well with other animation programs. So I won't get into the specifics of, let's say, animating in Adobe Flash and then exporting and bringing that in, but that's totally possible. And there are tutorials out there on how to do that. But I will show there's another app on the iPad called Rough Animator, which I like to use sometimes. And we could take this bouncing ball and we can import it into Procreate. So the way you do that is there's export options from Rough Animator. Export video as a MOV file, and then you just save it to your photos. And then when you are in Procreate, what you do is I already have this loaded in here, so why don't I load another one for you guys? I'll say I want to load something from a photo. I don't know if you saw that, but up in the top right corner, let me see if I can highlight it on my screen. Right here, photo on the iPad. You click that, and then you go over to whatever you want to import. In this case, it's this one, right? Okay. Not playing. Okay, and then hit use, and it should import it. And then when we go in there, we can hit play, and we have our animation from Rough Animator. Brings it in with a background, unfortunately, so we gotta set it to multiply to draw beneath it, but that's okay. So let's go over to from Rough Animator. Right. So if let's say we wanted to make a lineless animation and we're going to color in something, right? We're going to color in the ball. So what I'm going to do is make a new layer. I'm going to hold down that layer and hover over layer 1. Now we have a group going. And a group in Procreate is treated like a frame in the timeline. What? Oh, it is? Oh, my screen's blank. Oh, okay. Well, what did I get up to? Why did it go blank? Very strange. Oh, thank you. My girlfriend just told me. Okay. If you could help me out in the chat, where did we leave off on? What was the last thing that you saw? Lara modding IRL. Very true. Very true. Okay. So coloring the ball, importing. Okay. So did you guys see the photo import? I'll just do it again just in case. So you basically go to your photos and then you just click on it and you click use. And then it brings it in. I think that's what froze the screen. Oh, learn something new every day. So let me try to reset that. My bad. I guess that the software that I'm using doesn't like me doing that for whatever reason. It's something on my computer and it's not something on Procreate. So yeah, it's this program that I'm using to mirror the iPad. Okay, we're all good now. Cool. So now we're going to go in and we are going to paint beneath this sphere to try to add some lineless animation. I'm a fan of lineless animation. If it's just shapes with texture moving around, I like that a lot. So I'm going to grab one of my brushes, and what we're going to do, I guess you didn't see this part either, so I'll redo it as well. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We're going to create a layer, and then I'm going to drag this on top of that blank layer, and you're going to see it light up in blue right there. You see that right there? You let go, and now you have both layers in a group. I'm going to put this one on top, and then tap on the one below. And if these are out of the group, Procreate will treat each layer as its own frame. And if it's in a group together, Procreate will treat that group as a frame. So now I can actually put as many layers as I want in this group, and it will still only be one frame. Which is sort of what I showed you earlier with the girl and the dog in the woods. There were 5 layers in each group, so 5 layers per frame. So let's do this a couple times. So did it once here, did it once, gonna do it again. And if you set up, oops, set up. If you set up your file ahead of time, you don't have to keep making layers a bunch of times. So I'm going to go into a file that I have set up ahead of time. And we'll do some painting without having to make layers. We'll do it pretty fast. So I drop the opacity on my line layer. And now I can just have fun and paint. Paint. Make it a little smaller. Paint my sphere frame by frame. And once again, this is like the very basics of how all the technology and all the interface works for Procreate. So we're not getting into anything fancy, any animation principles yet. I'm just showing you like what is possible with the Procreate, right? And you keep doing that for long enough, and eventually, you have everything filled in, and it looks like this. Here we go. All right. I see I have someone spamming the chat. Max took care of it. Thank you, Max. I appreciate that. So you see this looks good, but those with a keen eye for animation and spacing will see that there's something slightly off about it. There is a spacing issue. And this is going to introduce another technique that I use a lot that is a Procreate interface. I can't speak right now. Procreate interface technique. And that is tapping. Tapping is super useful if you want to do fine adjustments to the position of your layer. So the reason why this is out of sync a little bit is because at the top it looks like a couple frames are moved over too far to the right. You can see that, right? Can you guys see that in chat? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I can see that it's not quite lining up with my line there. So I'm going to hit the layer that I want to move, which is just the orange layer. I'm going to hit this arrow right here, which is the transform tools. I like to keep it on freeform and magnetic. And what you can do, that I have 2 ways of moving this layer back to where it needs to be, is I'll slide to the left until I see this blue thing appear, right? And as long as you keep it pretty controlled, I'm not doing it, you can keep it on this axis right here. So it's just nudging over to the left. So that's one way to do it, is by turning on magnetics down at the bottom and just sort of sliding it to the left. You'll feel it sort of lock into place. It's very tactile, I like it a lot. And then the other way is you hit the arrow up here to get the transform tools, and you can tap your layers into place. So if you tap, okay, I'm going to make a little diagram for this really quick. If you tap at the exact place that is sort of perpendicular to your layer being selected, it will move in only that direction. If you tap somewhere over here, it will sort of move, I think it moves diagonally. Let me try really quick. Yeah, it does. Okay. So if you tap in this region over here, it'll move diagonally this way. If you tap in this region, it'll move diagonally this way. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's locked to 90 and 45 degrees for the tapping. Someone correct me on that if I'm wrong. So what you want to do is you want to tap right next to this blue circle on the left. Tap, 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 tap. Maybe it needs to go out with one. Tap. Now when we look at our animation, it's still off a little bit. So let me turn on my onion skins. Hopefully I can get this right while everyone's watching. It looks like it's the loop point, so might still need to come over a little bit. Let me try that. Tap. One. Tap. Hopefully that loops a little bit better. It still doesn't look right. That's all right. Here, what I like to do is if I'm having trouble with a loop, I'll take my last frame and I'll copy it down to my first frame, which is what you're seeing right here. I put it here and I can see what's off. So it's still too far over to the right. That's helpful. I'll take this one, tap it over to the left a little bit, take this one, tap it over to the left a little bit, and then let's see if that works better. That's working a lot better now. All right, so great. So that showed you off two techniques to sort of move your layers around. One is using the magnet tool and sliding it, and the other one is tapping. Oh, it's called nudge. Nudge has been there a long time, and I love it. That's what Max is saying in the chat. Cool. So, okay. When we start getting into groups, things start to get a little more complicated. So all you need to remember, basically, this is an elaborate diagram for the thing that I made for Procreate, is that one group equals one frame. And how you keep track of all this stuff, since there aren't really timelines in Procreate, what I like to do is just kind of write it out on a piece of paper. So this is what I did to figure out this animation. And it looks really elaborate, but it's not. It's just basic math. There are 48 frames total for my whole animation. I want the background to cycle twice because I don't want to paint that background more than I have to. I'm just going to paint it once and let it go through the cycle. I wanted to have as few frames as possible for the girl animation. And so if you take 48 and divide it by 3, that's a 16 frame cycle. So she's on a 16 frame cycle. And the only thing that's really drawn individually for each frame is the dog and the contact areas. So the dog has a 48 frame cycle. And yeah, so for something this complicated, you do sort of need to have a knowledge, working knowledge of sort of timelines and timings in your head and put it down on paper, keep track of it that way. Every single one of my frames that need to be named are named with frame 1 or frame 2 to keep track of that so I don't get lost later. Okay, that's pretty much everything I can think of technically in terms of animating and Procreate, at least the way that I use it. If you guys do have any questions about the technical aspect, I will be doing a Q&A after I get into more of the animation fundamental stuff. But this next part is going to be animation fundamentals, things like timing and spacing, and this info is much more catered towards students and those who are new to animation. So yeah, so that's where this section sort of picks up. And we're going to go over some basics now, I suppose. This is stuff that I had in my tutorial. So now we're going to get it here on stream for free. Well, for the cost of the admission to Lightbox Expo. So what's timing and spacing? I'm sure if you've heard about animation, you've heard these different terms. Some people use the terms interchangeably, but I think that there is a very clear distinction between timing and spacing. Timing is when things happen within a given time frame, and time is constant. So it's flowing along, in this case at I think 12 frames per second or something. And timing is sort of like a rhythm. So this is the timing of this ball. It's slower than I thought it was. So it's pretty slow, right? You can almost imagine this timing if you're watching like an elephant taking steps, right? Pretty slow. And then you might have timing that's something that's more like this, which might be like a medium-sized dog running. So timing is sort of when things happen realistically, right? And there's even timing for other things. Like these brackets represent the timing for the floaty timing when it's hanging in the air. That's the timing for when it's hanging in the air. Spacing is a little bit different. Spacing is the spacing is the path traveled plus speed. So here are two spacing examples down here. And you can see that the closer the spacing is on your screen, so the closer the drawings get to each other, the slower the animation is. And usually with slow spacing, you have overlapping drawings. And fast spacing, over here next to the slow spacing, is when the drawings are spread out a lot. Usually not or barely overlapping, sometimes stretching. And for really like high quality animation, you don't want to have too many frames where there's big expanses, gaps in your animation. You kind of want to try ways to smear your, this is called a smear in animation, or to stretch out your frame to make them touch. You can see here I'm doing that to make these touch. Spacing just gets too huge here, so it's impossible. And if you do too many smear frames one after the other, it becomes too noticeable. People start to fixate on it when they're watching the animation. The illusion's broken a little bit. So that's the difference between timing and spacing. Max asked a question, which I'm going to answer right now because Max is best. Can I ask how you chose to bend the ball on the contact bounce? That's a really good question, and I should get into that for the basics of animation. So you want to show the ball touching at the contact frame, and it gives more weight to change. So I'm showing more of a visual change here by showing it actually touching the ground and then showing the shape to form. And you'll notice that the frame before it hits the ground and the frame after are different. So I'm showing more of a fast velocity out here, and I'm showing more of a change for these two frames. So once you start getting more comfortable with animation, you start making these decisions on a frame by frame level. And my decision here was I want the ball to touch at this frame so you can see the change, and then I want the ball to not touch so you can see the acceleration. So a lot of change here and a lot of noticeable change here is what was going through my head for the stretching animation. Max has been knighted in the chat. So we talked about spacing. What types of spacing are there? So one that is used sometimes is something called even spacing. And I think it's important to look at even spacing to understand, like, I guess the basics. So you can see that the space between each drawing is exactly the same with even spacing. And yeah, I guess that's all for even spacing. And next up, we'll get to something that I think is a little more useful, which is ease out and ease in. So you can see that the spacing here, sorry, I lost myself for a moment. Give me a second. Okay, the spacing here is tighter at the top and the bottom and further apart in the middle. And that basically shows that it's slower. From our earlier example, if spacing's smaller, it'll be slower. If spacing is longer, wider, it'll be faster. Something that's a convention in animation is, and I hope I get this right, because I don't actually come from a traditional animation background. I kind of figured this out as I went, is your extreme poses, so extreme top and extreme bottom, are usually circled. And this is just to help anybody else who might pick up your project and look at your animation. And the poses that are halfway, or the breakdowns, are usually underlined. And then your in-betweens have no extra underline or circle here. And you might see more traditional, this is going to get into timing charts, and I'll go really quickly through this, but in more traditional animation, you would also have these symbols right here. And that just means that this spacing from 1 to 4 is the same as the spacing from 4 to 5. And then when you make these marks again, you say this spacing from 1 to 3 is the same spacing from 3 to 4. And then if these were the same spacing, you would do it again here. And that's a visual indicator, once again, for in-betweeners and other people animating. But that's getting way into timing charts, and that's a whole other thing. So just take a look at this and kind of notice how it feels going up and down. because I'm going to show you something that's similar, but with like much tighter spacing. So just remember what that felt like right there. And now we're going to look at this one. So there's something different about it, right? It's slower on the ends, and that's just because of exactly what we talked about. Tighter spacing, squishing the spacing makes it slower. So hopefully by this time, I've sort of imparted that to you. Yeah, so moving on from spacing. Sine waves. This is something that I do a lot, especially for these looping animations with flowing, like the flowing cape on the mage girl. So if you were to look at this, you might think that it's incredibly like flowy and it looks very organic, and you wouldn't necessarily associate this with what we saw earlier with even spacing, because it doesn't look even. It looks like it's flowing, right? But if I turn on these charts really quick, here you can see that basically all I'm doing is tracking peaks and valleys on very even spacing. If we zoom in here, this is an 8-frame loop, and you can see that the peak and the valley is going across this chart here at the bottom. Draw it for a moment. With very, oh, it's locked. Very even spacing. This is all exactly the same. But once you look at it, without these charts on it, it looks like this could be a tail, this could be somebody's hair blowing in the wind. It could be so many different things. If you take the same principle and you apply it to a sort of curvy end to these extremes, curving like this and curving like this, and you plot out your spacing for your peaks and your valleys, suddenly you have a really organic looking flowing thing that you can loop quite easily. So sine waves are another thing that are incredibly useful for animating, especially for animating loops. And I should say, since I'm here, looping animations are helpful for some things. I don't think that they're as helpful for films unless you're establishing a walk cycle and you're going to use that and break it up, because usually in films you have the beginning of a shot and then you have the end of a shot, and the character changes from beginning to end. So yes, it's not as useful for film, but where loops are useful is something like games where you have to do a bunch of cycles. You do walk cycles, you do run cycles, you do all kinds of things that need to be loopable. And then additionally, like stuff that I do, I just like making GIFs for my own enjoyment. So loops are really fun for that. And for me, at least, they've ended up being a really good marketing tool to show off the work that I do and get something that people see and are very interested in. May I see the grid again? Tell you what, after I'm done, we can go through the Q&A. You can ask that, and I'll show you everything, any of these that you want to see again. So something that you should keep an eye out for if you were doing looping animations is that your first frame, that you need to consider the first frame and the last frame like the same frame. So I don't actually have a frame 17 here, but my frame 17 is frame 1. Hopefully that makes sense. And if you don't get the loop point when you're looping something, it's very easy to get the penultimate or the second to last frame wrong. So you can see if I put my 16th frame here, well, suddenly the spacing's not even anymore. You'll see a visual hitch. It'll look a little weird. I think I can do a very extreme example of that if I repaint frame 16. Hopefully this works because the spacing is pretty large. But let's say we know that frame 16 should definitely not be here, right next to frame 15, right? This is an obvious example of spacing being incorrect. So let's see how that plays. So yeah, you can see a definite hitch, and that's because we obviously put it in the wrong place. So it gets caught up. So I'm gonna undo that to keep this example good. All right. Going back to the mage girl animation, let me go back to that really quick. I actually like, I guess cheated a lot of this. What I did for a ton of this animation is I made a lot of boiling animation. And what a boiling animation is it is the same, where did I put that? It is the same shape or the same drawing drawn over and over a few times. So this is 4 drawings. That's it. But if you have 4 drawings that are exactly the same and you did them by hand and you did them imperfectly, because it's impossible to do the same thing perfectly, you get a little bit of texture in there. And if you take those 4 frames and duplicate them a few times, you can see in this case, I duplicated 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I duplicated it 3 times and offset them into an easing in and easing out pattern. Suddenly, it doesn't look like 4 frames. It looks like 16 frames, even though I actually only painted 4 frames. So for this animation, I used a boiling effect for a lot of the elements, and then I just repeated the elements, duplicated them, and offset them a little bit. So you can see the difference between a boil and no boil, just for something that's sitting completely still. So for instance here, this is another example I made for the tutorial. This has a boil throughout. This is using the easing in and easing out spacing that I showed you earlier. And it's also using that idea of sine waves. So this is everything that I've shown you so far, sort of put together. And you can see that it's got a life to it, right? It looks cool. It looks like I painted every frame, even though for the face, I only painted 4. So sometimes if you're short on time, that can be a helpful thing to do boils. I'm going to show you the same animation with no boils on the face, no boiling. So you can see it looks a little weird for some reason. It looks a little computery. Susanna Lopez is asking, how do I do the boil? So I do the boil just by doing the same drawing 4 times. So this is just 4 drawings. I didn't realize how complicated this file was. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's just redrawing it 4 times. Yes, you trace them. Thank you. Who said that? Thank you, Joe Whimsy. I appreciate that. So yeah, basically you just trace whatever it is that you want to boil. And then to go further into this Mage Girl example, I can show you that she is constructed out of basically 4 heads and 4 faces that I traced over 4 times, and then reposition the face and reposition the head, and that's it. I use those same techniques that I talked about earlier of sliding and tapping. Oh, I didn't want to tap that. Okay. And same thing for the face. It's clipping the head, it's sliding and tapping. And I have this really beautiful drawing up above. So I already figured out all the movement in my drawing, and I can track these different boiling shapes that I already made onto my drawing. How do you tap again? Okay, I'll show you. You hit the arrow button, top left right here, and then you just nudge, tap. You can't really see it. Hold on, I wonder if I can hold it up to the thing, and I can show you. I'm going to hold it up to the camera. Okay, so this is how you nudge. This is a little awkward. Let me stand up. This is how you nudge. So like this. Tap, 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 tap. You can see it nudging. So you basically just tap the direction that you want it to go. I'm going to put that back where it was. Cool. We love a tutorial. Thank you. How do you mask an area? Okay, so this is set to clipping mask, this layer above. So you can see that I left it messy on the top because I wanted the hair to sort of fade off when I tap it up and down. And you click on right here on the layer you want to clip to the one below, and you click clipping mask, or you tap clipping mask. I'm used to clicking on a computer. Yeah, so use a clipping mask. That's how you get it to mask to your other shape. And then if you do it right, it looks like I painted every frame, even though I didn't. And if I go even further into this, actually, let's look at my list. This is my list of all the things I had to do, which is sort of similar to that list I showed earlier for the dog and the girl. Um, but basically, I figured out head and ears each need to have 4 drawings. Face needs to have 4 drawings. Hair behind, hair front, body base. So this is actually why I didn't turn this into a tutorial, because I don't think anyone would actually want to make this many layers and copy paste them around. It's good in small doses, but this is just excessive, and I'll show you what I mean. But I like it. You would do it, Franklin? Okay, well maybe you would, maybe you would. So this is what it looks like, and you can see this head right here was, how many layers? Head, face, hair in front, hair behind. The head was 4 layers. I did it first and then I flattened it down. So if you account for all the layers, we have this arm, this sword, this fire, this other arm, the body, head. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the face is broken up into 3 more. So that's actually 9 layers that I'm just adjusting. But if you put it all together, it can look very, very, very cool. Very solid and very flowy. You could, of course, take another approach where you just do your line work on one layer and you do a fill layer below and just paint underneath. So, yeah, that's kind of the extent to which I have used Procreate as an animation tool. And let's see what else I have to say here. And then lastly, just so you see, the rim light was painted frame by frame because it's rim light. It's really easy and it's really fun to paint. So that's using an add layer, clipping to all of her shapes merged down into one layer, and then the background painted behind it. And then you put that all together and you get this. Will this be recorded? Yes. Boiled over by all of this. Okay. Definitely gonna try this. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad that you're gonna try it. So it looks like I got through that a lot faster than I thought that I was going to. I thought that was going to take at least an hour to 45 minutes. So we're in good shape for lots of Q&A. If you guys want to revisit any of these things, if you guys want to, yeah, just if you want to ask a question, do at Michael Relth so I can see it pop up and highlighted. But yeah, ask away. Actually, before you start asking, real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Lightbox, because this entire event has been absolutely amazing, and I've met the coolest people. I never would have started a Discord. I never would have streamed this much, and I never would have met the really amazing people that I did. I never would have seen inspiring talks. Some of my favorites were Nathan Fowkes, the panel that Tuna did just earlier today. Lightbox did an amazing job. This doesn't even feel that different from an in-person expo in a way. It feels like something that's completely different and completely new and amazing. So big round of applause for Lightbox for putting this on and making this possible. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, massive shout outs for that. Thank you, Lightbox. Yeah. Okay, so let's start the Q&A, and yeah, let's just hit me with the questions. It's moving really fast, so tell you what, I'm just gonna grab the first question that I see, and then if your question doesn't get answered, wait a little while, maybe ask it again. I don't think I can get through all of them, so it's gonna be a little bit RNG. How do you import rough animator animations? I didn't understand that part. Okay, I'll go through that again. That's totally fine. Actually, I think it might crash my iPad again. Basically, in Rough Animator, you can look this up as a tutorial, but in Rough Animator, what you do is you export your animation as an MOV file, as a MP4 or MOV. You save that to your camera roll or to your photos or whatever, and then you just go into Procreate. I hope this doesn't mess up my recording software again. You hit Photo, and then you navigate to where it is, and you hit import, and then it'll bring it in to your Procreate interface as a bunch of layers. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out quite how to get the white out of there. So I do like it to be just a black line, but I think that's just how Rough Animator exports. That's fine. Set it to multiply, so anything that you draw underneath it will be beneath the line, and you always see the line on top. If you want to do lineless animation, you turn off that line layer later. Background on really quick. Turn off that line layer later, and then you have eventually something that looks. Actually, I didn't turn the line layer off here. Whatever, you get the picture. So yeah, that's kind of the workflow from Rough Animator to Procreate. There is also a workflow where you can go from your computer, animating in Flash or TV Paint or whatever, and bring in an image sequence. But I'm not going to get into that. I don't have the setup to show you everything that's happening on my computer. Maybe I'll make a tutorial about that for YouTube or something. Or I'm sure that there are tutorials out there where you can see that as well. So yeah, there's a lot of options. And for me, I just love Procreate because all the brushes are cool. The interface is fun. It's just super fun to use. And so it's amazing to finish artwork in. It's amazing to finish animation in. Can you flip drawings in Procreate, like how you would flip or roll through frames on paper? Not that I know of, actually. I just do this. I just put my finger at the bottom and sort of flip this way. But it's not. Yeah, there might be a way, but I haven't figured it out. So I actually don't flip that much. So I just sort of figured out my poses and the timing that I want them. I have a question. How do you export without background? When I export PNG animation, it just comes out to the current frame. I'm sorry, Gabriella. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I would need to maybe take a look at the top. Can you flip your canvas? Yeah, that's baked into Procreate. You just hit this right here and flip it. This button. I'm sorry. I guess you can't see where I'm tapping, right? You hit this button over here, little guy, and then you just flip your canvas. That's really easy. That's really useful. Okay, flip back. Okay. More questions. So if there's 4 frames for just the face, but more for the clothing, fire, hair, etc., you just loop the aspect while other parts have more frames. Yeah. So basically, what I did for I'll go back to her to show you. I just had to figure it out with my brain. So it's just planning a little bit and some basic math. Where's my chart? Okay, so the whole thing, how many frames is the whole thing? I kind of forgot. It's a 16 frame loop. So the whole thing is a 16 frame loop. So it looks as though my cape, it's written as 1 through 9, but that's incorrect. It should be 1 through 8. Let me fix that. The cape is 1 through 8, so that's dividing 16 directly in half, right? So I make the loop for the cape 1 through 8. Because the 16 can be divided by 4, 16 divided by 4 is 4, I make the boil 4 frames long. If I was doing an animation that was, let's say, 9 frames long, I think it would look good to get away with a 3 frame boil because that's sort of divided evenly, 3, 3, and 3. That way you don't have a frame repeating twice, if that makes sense. So let me go back to that this one diagram that I had, this one right here. So you can see, you start on the pink frame here. I'll draw over this for a moment. If you start on the pink frame here, you don't want this to also be a pink frame, right? So you don't want this to also be your 1 frame. So you want to look at how many frames you have total, and you want to make your division based on that. Hopefully that answers your question. I got a lot into math and stuff, and that's always super boring. Can you transform the position of your entire animation? That's a good question. Which animation am I about to ruin right now? Okay. Not this one because it doesn't look as good, but yes, you can. You totally can. So I'm gonna take this, and it requires quite a bit of selecting, but what I'm gonna do first is just sort of toggle down all of these layers. This is obviously easier the less amount of groups that you have. So just give me a moment. So what you can do is you tap on the layer and then you right swipe to select multiple layers. That's what I'm doing. I'm just selecting all the layers that I need. That's all 16 of them. We're going to put it down in the corner now. Done. There. And we transform the whole animation. Now we're going to transform it again. We're going to rotate it and put it here. There we go. So yes, that's totally possible. And hopefully that explained how to do it. Is there a cap in the amount of frames in an animation? Yes, and that is based, I showed that a little bit earlier, but I'll show it again. Canvas information, I might have gone too fast when I went there before, so I'll slow it down a little bit. Click on the wrench top left, go to canvas, and then at the very bottom, click canvas information. You can see it's highlighted right there. You go down to the this thing that says layers, and you can see the maximum number of layers that you have available based on your canvas size. What's my canvas size? Dimensions right here. So for some reason I made this a massive file, like 2.7 pixels wide. So that only gives me 91 layers available. Let's see, is it possible to do longer 3-minute animations on Procreate if too many layers are required for the number of frames needed? Is a way to string multiple files together? I think you would really have to take a look at how long your shots are for your animation. But I would think the best way to do this, to approach something that's a little bit longer, would be to look at your shot length, right? I said earlier that the HD file that I had, I think it's HD, it might be a little bit bigger. Actually, you know what? Let me look. I'll take a look and I'll give you a very exact answer. So let's make a new canvas that is 1920 by 1080, DPI 72. So we're working HD. So that says that the maximum number of layers, at least for my system, and I'm not sure if it changes per system, is 250 layers. That means if I wanted to have a line layer and a fill layer, I would divide 250 in half, and that would be the shot length that I would be able to work with. So 125 frame shot. I'm not sure if that's different for different hardwares. No, not 100% sure. Can you invert the order of the frames easily? Thanks. You know what? I never tried that, so I'm not 100% sure. I wonder if there's an option for playback to make it play backwards. One shot, ping pong. Well, I just know that there's this play setting where you can make it play forwards and backwards, which I think is pretty cool, depending on the animation you're doing. But I don't know how to reverse the order of the frames without doing something where you drag them like this in the timeline. You actually change the position in the layer panel. I think, can you change the position down? Oh, you can change the position down here too. Yeah, so if there's a better way to do that, I don't know it, but I think you would just sort of have to drag your frames around, change the position that way. Is there a way to keep stationary background without duplicating it for every frame? I can't believe I didn't go over backgrounds. I'm very sorry, I completely missed a very important part of the interface. Okay, I'll do that with this guy right here. I'm going to give him a background right now. I'm glad you asked that. Who asked that? The Artistic Strawberry. Thank you very much. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to create a new layer to, actually I already have one right here, but let me make a new one. Delete this. So this, when you make a new layer that's loose in the layer panel, it counts as a frame in the animation. That's the way Procreate sees it. So you can see this isn't really what I want. It just goes blank for one frame, right? So we go down to that blank frame, we tap it, and we click this button. So you tap it in the timeline down at the bottom. So I'm tapping here. tap, and I click on background. Now there's no blank frame, but what's happening exactly? What's happening is if I go to this background frame, and personally I like to take 2 frames and group them and make that the background frame. That way I have a group that is a background group, and I can just paint as much as I want with as many layers as I want in here. Now let's give this guy a background, some plants, you know, some path he's walking on. Of course, he should be moving in space, so this doesn't really make sense, but that's okay. Maybe it's a bit of a stylized thing. And mountains in the background. Yeah, this looks so good. Right, clouds in the sky. I'm an illustrator, I swear. All right. So now we have a static background. So hopefully, didn't want news to pop up, my bad. Hopefully that answers your question about having a static background. The same thing also works for if you have a layer at the very top of your layer panel. And I'm going to do another one and make a group because I like groups better for this kind of thing. Go down to my timeline once more. And you tap on this right here, which is at the rightmost and at the topmost. You click foreground. Now, how's that any different than the background, right? So basically, your animation, whatever's in between this animating, is going to be sandwiched between these background and these foreground layers. To draw on it, I just tap it, select the layer I want, and now we can put something in front of it. What are we going to put in front of them? Any ideas? Totoro. There you go, that's Totoro. That looks like a cat. A dog? Okay, very good. Let's put a dog in front of them. All right, now he has a dog. This is almost like the Duck Hunt dog, you know I'm talking about from Nintendo. He like sticks his head up and he laughs at you when you miss. You know, really, he should not be laughing at you because you just spared that duck's life, you know. So there we go. So now he's in front, right? I'm gonna slide him over so it overlaps more. And there we go. And I'm fairly certain that this, you can also do blending modes and stuff. So you can make a multiply over the top and hit play. There's a lot of cool options for foreground and background. So hopefully that makes sense. So great character in Smash 2, that's very true. Can you export animation with a clear alpha background? Yes, I think that you can. I haven't had to export anything in a while, but I'm pretty sure the way that you do that. Let me turn off my backgrounds. And I think that the key is to take this background layer right here and turn it off so that you just see the grid. And then you go to your wrench, you go to share, animated PNG files. I think animated GIF might give you no background. MP4 might. I know when I did this, I did PNG files for my export, and then I'm pretty sure that came with an alpha, but I haven't done that in a long time. I do know that I got this stuff back onto my computer for the Procreate commission, so I'm pretty sure I was able to export it with alpha. Yeah. Max is saying subscribe and smash that like button and bell icon. Lara's a bird single-handedly promoting the book. True. I'll tell you all about the book and what I'm doing with these brushes and everything at the end. Would love to learn about how you did the girl's hair. The other girl's hair, the one from the walking scene, right? How I did her hair. Okay. You know what? You're asking right now. I actually, I actually don't remember. So let's go dig through these layers to look at what I did. Okay, I think it's pretty simple. So I have my line layer up top. Let me solo that so you can see it. This is what I used, what I did in Procreate on one layer to try and figure out her whole movement. And then I have her head. I'm pretty sure as a boiling animation, once again, the boiling thing, that I just sort of move around and adjust. it's a boiling animation except for there's boiling right and boiling left. So this is getting a little more complicated. And then I have this as an element. I have this as an element, which is her backpack and her legs. And then I have this shape as an element. And I'm pretty sure I did this as a flat shape. And then I used some of Max Ulichny's really cool brushes to brush in this stuff over here. One of the his bristle brushes, I think. And then when you put all those together and be very careful about it, you get this. I don't know why my background's doing that. Okay. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question about the hair, unless you want me to go into more detail about it. How do you make a background loop move along with the character instead of having a static background? You need to just, if you're going to have a background move with the character, you have to move it yourself. So you have to track it. If you have a static background, I'm sorry, if you have a background moving on an even spacing, you just need to get your drawing, very large ideally, and figure out how to move it and make it loop. That's not a very good answer. And somebody else is asking about the background. Okay, so this background for this piece, I had a lot of help in Maya. So if you want to know more about looping things in Maya, I don't think this is the right talk for it exactly, but let me show you what this behind the scenes thing once more. My lights just flickered. Basically, what I did is I set up things. Where's your paid course? That would be cool. I would love to have a paid course. I don't have one. I set up these trees at exact distances, right? So let's say 100 meters, and then I moved the camera back 100 meters, and I made that a linear move. So basically, what that does is, if this tree, if this thing is here, and there's another one 100 units away, and I'll do it like this. I don't really know how to explain this. Basically, after my camera moves 100 units, where this tree was, this tree will now be. So hopefully that makes sense. I set that up in Maya, spent a lot of time fussing with it to make it loop, and then painted over it frame by frame in Procreate. So there's a lot to this particular part of the setup that requires a little more in-depth animation knowledge. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. I don't know why, but Dennis just said like Anderson Paak. Whatever it is, I agree. I love Anderson Paak. He's the best. And then how to loop in Procreate. Oh, yeah. So this whole animation is only 24 frames. The whole animation in Procreate is 48 frames. So I just duplicated all those frames up. Basically looks like this. Duplicate and drag it up. But keeping track of all the numbers, of course. So keeping track of, how to explain, keeping track of these numbers, where I want my frames from my background animation to be in the overall timeline. So, this is frame 22 here, right? But then frame 22 also exists here when I copy it up. It's a little copy in each group. Yes, exactly. That's a lot of math. That is a lot of math. I remember reading Richard Williams. He wrote the Animator's Survival Guide. He's a legend. He will be missed as well. Amazing animator. And he said something in one of his chapters of his book where he said, animation is part art. I'm paraphrasing. Part art and part being like a car mechanic. So you have to get under the hood. You have to understand the math behind it and the structure behind it, and then you also need to have animation as a balance between analytic and intuitive. Yes, may he rest in peace, Richard Williams, one of the greatest animators ever. Yeah, I really look up to him. So yeah, If there are any more questions, I'm gonna keep going with this, so you guys can just ask away, assuming that you want to know. Animator Survival Kit, love that book. Yeah, me too. It's so amazing. I still reference it today. Car mechanic, me? You're literally a car mechanic? That's cool. What would you say to a high school student that wants to reach your level of artistry so they can do things like be an artist like you or be able to go get to art school for animation? Um, I should really think about that because I don't know exactly what I would say, Jojo. But I would say to I had sort of a lecture that's not a lecture, a presentation earlier that's on YouTube about how I made my own children's book, which is still uploaded. You can go watch it on YouTube. And I would say everything that I said for the first half of that lecture about setting aside time to make art, um, having internal motivation, having external motivation, surrounding yourself with a circle that you trust that can give you honest feedback about your work, and reaching out to other artists and being kind of genuine to them. I think all those things are, if you just keep practicing all those things and work on your art, you can take it as far as you want to. You can become a professional, you can get into art school. And I will say that as good as art school is, you don't necessarily have to go to a brick and mortar art school. There are a lot of options out there, like CGMA an amazing school. There's so many schoolism as well. There's so many amazing online schools that you can go to further your education. And this is a long answer, but I would also say to if you want to be an artist, an artist that works representationally. I'm drawing things that look representational, that look human, that look real. You know, they're not real; they're stylized. What I would say is to um, practice your fundamentals. Do figure drawing, do landscape painting, study the masters, work on fundamental drawing and painting. Um, all of that stuff translates to designing and making art, biz dev, all that stuff. So the basics are so important. I'm still learning them, and I've been working as a freelance artist for the past 11 years. I'm still learning them. So yeah, definitely. I saw a really great question which I want to answer by Ink Vowels. Is there a possibility to set a pivot to turn from a specific point? There totally is. I had a demo that I forgot to bring over. I'm sorry that you have to look at this mess. Um, let's see, it should be called Pivot. Do I have it here? I could just make a new one to show you as well. See if Sword should be. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new tutorial because this is gonna be too convoluted if I try to explain. I'll just make a new document under this wrong presentation. Make a new document. The way that Procreate, you can't. The short answer is you can't. You can't make a custom pivot for your animation, but you can kind of cheat the program a little bit, right? So let's say I want to have. There was that sword earlier. So here's the sword, right? Draw a sword really quick. And what I want to do is I want to rotate this sword from where? Where do we want to rotate it from? Let's say we want to rotate it from this point right here. So I'm going to hit this really quick. And I'm going to see sort of the bounds of my sword. I'm going to draw a rectangle around my sword as close as I can get it. I'm going to fill that in. Pay attention to this because there's a lot of steps. And see where that dot where I want it to rotate? I'm going to put that dot in the center of where, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. I'm going to duplicate what I just selected, put that dot in the very center of this new rectangle that is made by these things overlapping. I know that this seems convoluted, but the reason why I'm doing all of this is that because unless Procreate in the chat is gonna be like, oh, actually you can't do this, and I just don't know. I've been doing this elaborate process this whole time. But I think it'll just rotate around the center of your pixel, right? But if we do this, we want it to rotate from that point, and we select these two rectangles, and now we go back to my sword layer, and I make a tiniest little pixel dot somewhere on the sword layer at this little point right here. Right? Can you see it right there? It doesn't even have to be visible. It's just some pixels. Now Procreate will see this whole thing from this dot to this sword as one image, and it will rotate from that point where I put the dot. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a lot of steps, but if let's say you're setting up a boiling animation, what you could do is you could have that little dot baked into your boiling animation. You could just go through and erase it when you're done. It's really easy to erase. So I had to figure that out for things that rotated that I duplicated enough. Magic. Okay, yeah, so that's a little bit of a hack for that. Wait, no, I want to make it spin. Oh man, I'm really disappointed it's not spin. Oh, there we go. Cool. Legitimate sorcery. You're an engineer. Okay. F in the chat for all the minds you just blew. Okay. Okay. Do you have any tips on creating clean, lineless digital art? Also, do you think you'll stream art guides outside of Lightbox? Clean, lineless digital art. Do you mean animations? I'm trying to keep the talk focused on animation. But if you mean animations, I think that like anything, like any illustration that you're making, you just want to make really clean shapes. I guess this will be a good point to plug my brushes a little bit, but I made these brushes specifically to animate in Procreate, and I also have used them since for some freelance work. So they make clean shapes, they're really easy to control, and they leave a little bit of texture, which is nice. So I like these brushes for making super graphic stuff that has a tooth to it. And I used, this animation was done entirely with my brushes. And if you want to check them out, this is my brush plug. Sorry about being salesy. You can check that out at the bottom of this YouTube video. It's linked at the bottom. So yeah, I'd love it if you check those out. If you like them, that'd be cool. Lara's plugging me in the chat as well. Okay, so if there's more questions, I'll keep taking them. I technically have another 45 minutes. I could try and animate something. I could take more questions. Huh? What? The brushes aren't in the description? Oh, okay. Hey, the brushes aren't in the description. Never mind. Could you stop? That's my girlfriend's trolling me right now. Yeah. So if someone does have the Gumroad link, you can put it. One of the mods can put it in the chat. That'd be cool. For there's crepes. True. Okay, Danny's got help me out. He put it in the description. I guess I don't know how to market mountain stuff. That's cool. Any shading and highlight advice? For animation, I would say keep it really simple. Like either put a multiply layer on top for shadows. So if I was going to shade her, I'm going to make this a multiply layer. She already has shading. I just baked it in. But I would say just keep it simple. Like this is just shapes. It's not even really shading. So let's say I wanted to, I would set this to multiply. We can maybe make it look like she's getting a fill on her shadow with like this purpley color. So everything will go slightly purple when it goes into shadow. So yeah, just really simple, set it to multiply, clip it to, you can see I clipped it right here, clipping mask. Clip it to your layer below, and then just paint into it. I can set an add layer on top to add some highlights. Oops. Set this to add And also, if you're doing shadows with multiply, you want to do a lighter color. If you're doing something with add, you want to do a much darker color. Otherwise, it'll become overwhelming really quick. You'll see what I mean if I put this orange right on here. That's garish and very hot. But if you want to do something more subtle, you bring the saturation and the value down a little bit, and suddenly you have pretty nice highlights on things. So I would just say keep your highlights and your shadows really simple, clean shapes. Make sure that they make sense from the direction of the light, like the light direction that you imagine the light is coming from. I'm not doing that right now, I'm just making it up, but you should. So don't be like me. But also, I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, other questions. What's a multiplier layer? That's just the blending mode. So you can click on this little A right here. It's normally set to N, which is normal. So normal is it doesn't blend with the layers below and above. And multiply will set things to be darker. You can see that's dark now. Add will set things to be lighter. Normal will set things to be normal. Okay, another question. How do you preserve the quality when uploading to Instagram? Every time I upload, animation gets fuzzy. I think I have that happen too, so I'm not 100% sure. I do know one thing for Instagram, this is a social media tip, is you want to pre-crop everything. So you don't ever want to crop anything in the Instagram interface because it'll get fuzzy. So you want to decide on your resolution. If it's going to be square, pre-crop everything to square. If you have an image with some, maybe I'm wrong about this, but this is what I've noticed. If you have an image that you want to zoom in on it, do that ahead of time and then crop it and save it, and then you can bring it in. Might be a silly question. Say you have two different things you want to animate in an image. Is a way to do that to have each thing at two different speeds, frames per second. Not frames per second. In Procreate, everything has to be set to your scene's frame per second. And everything will be on the same timing as well. What I would recommend if you want to animate all that in Procreate would be to maybe make the files separately and figure out how you want them to move and then bring them in together. That might be one way to do it. Or you just sort of plan very carefully. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers that exactly, but please convince Please convince Michael Relth to make this and his children's book talk into paid Gumroad tutorials. I mean, yeah, you can convince me. I could try it. Instagram crunches JPEGs down to 60% in some cases. I didn't know that. That's crazy. How did you make your brushes? I scanned in a bunch of gouache stuff that I did from my sketchbook. Is there a simple way to import a bunch of layers from one file to another in Procreate? You know what? I'm completely blanking on that. If you want, yeah, I don't think I can answer that right now. I just completely forgot. But there is a way to do it. Actually, let me try and figure it out really quick because maybe I can show it, right? So let's say I want to grab all these layers. Oh, right, I remember now. Okay, so you go like this. You select them all by swiping right. I'm going to grab all these orange dots. I'm going to hold down my finger on the top one, and I'm going to drag it over here. Oh, it's not doing it. Okay, here we go. Now all these dots are collected under my finger, which is being held down. I don't know if you can see that. We're going to go out to gallery with my other finger. I clicked. And we're going to take it, let's say, into this file. So I tapped on that file, and now I'm just going to let go. So these were two different sized files, but you can see that now my orange ball is right in the middle of this other weird animation I made for a demo. So it is possible to, if you select all of your layers, to just and I'm not sure if this is true, but I always select from the bottom up just because I know temporally bottom up means from the beginning to the end. So start at the bottom, work your way up, select them all in order. I'm not sure if the order selected changes the order that it imports, but I don't want to risk it, so I just do it that way every time. You've given up on that as impossible? Well, I'm glad that you know it's possible now. That's great. Wow, thank you for that. I've been importing each layer piece by piece. Oh no. That's yeah, that's one of the first things I had to figure out when I was doing that commission piece. Will you be posting your info animations anywhere? What do you mean by info animation? Any other questions? My mind has been blown 100% on that. Your exceptional and super friendly talks have always been a highlight of the expo. Oh, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate that. I've been importing single layers. Oh no. Any tips for a front walk cycle? Oh, that's rough. Front walk cycles are hard because all the motion is foreshortened. So if these are 2 feet, you see a foot coming forward is just sort of an up and down. You can exaggerate the out a little bit of the feet, but then that starts to stylize the walk. People will walk with their toes out. Some people, walk with their toes in. So yeah, I was actually just trying to do one of those the other day, Bree, and upfront walk cycles are very challenging. So the best thing I can do, this is the best recommendation for any kind of reference that you need, is to stand up and grab your phone, because everyone has one of these, and set it to video mode and put it down somewhere. So I'm going to put it down right here. Right? And then just record yourself doing whatever it is. If you're doing a front cycle, record kind of the movement you want. Maybe it's like, something like this, or it's something, like with your hips moving, whatever it is. Make sure you get the character. And then if you're familiar with After Effects, you can isolate a cycle, and then you can scale up or scale down the movement as it comes towards the camera to keep the head and the feet sort of at the same height. And then you can look at it and you can analyze it and you can figure out. You lost me at standing up, too much exercise, true. And then you can figure out kind of what it looks like in real perspective from a real animation. So the timing, planning, and all that jazz. Someone asked if they want to see my random color brush. Okay, I'll show you that. That's not really animation, but I do want you to check out my brushes if you want to. So I just developed this because I always like to make big swatches of random colors, and I always end up, so M brush color random, and this one, that's just color exclamation point. I like to work on a gray sort of tone canvas. So this is just one color, but you can see that there's greens and there's reds and there are purples. And this is a very good place. Maybe you can even use this as an overlay layer. So each time I tap or do a stroke, it changes the color slightly, and you can see it more dramatically with more saturated colors. It won't ever deviate too far from this range that you have selected. So you still have control over this, but I like to use this to start off a painting, especially if I have no idea what I'm doing, if I'm just putting color down. Already, that's interesting color to me because it's got desaturation, it's got saturation. There's no real value there yet, but we can put that in. Maybe there's a dark blue over here. Suddenly I'm starting to feel something from just the colors. So that's more of like a fun process brush, It's not the most helpful for all situations, but yeah. So that's my big color brush that I have on my Gumroad. Any tips for animating an action scene? I would say action scenes are really fast and really dynamic, and there's usually like camera angles at play, right? So I would think about what angle you want to shoot your character from. Action scenes are usually really dynamic if the character runs from the background towards the foreground. Yeah, and then if you're going for something that's more like a Street Fighter stylized movement thing, Um, uh, I would emphasize all of your drawings on the pose that is important and just blur through everything else. Like, uh, this is hard to explain exactly, but let's say you're animating. I'll do a little demo. Oh, that's a big brush. Okay. Let's say you're animating something, and it's somebody running, right? Right. So here's somebody running. This isn't going to be a great drawing because it's not super well informed, you know. And that is a bad leg. So let me fix that. So you have somebody running, right? This would be an extreme pose where the legs are the furthest out this way, and the furthest out this way, and the arms are the furthest out. And so this is sort of an extreme pose. And then your other extreme pose would be if this is a run and it's in an action scene, would be this arm's in front, right? And then this arm is trailing behind. And then this leg is trailing behind. And then this leg that's in the background is stepping forward. So I think if you're doing like very snappy animation, it's really good to, these are terrible drawings by the way, it's very good to emphasize these poses. And you sort of blur, not blur, but like you have breakdowns in between, but sometimes even the breakdowns, they favor these key extreme poses. So in action scenes, maybe somebody is punching at a camera, you know, you really want to favor this like impact frame where he's hitting the camera. This is a bad drawing. I'm sorry. Like you really want to favor these extreme poses and the impact poses and things like that. That's what I'd say. But also I haven't animated a whole lot of action scenes, so um, yeah. Uh, any other questions from anyone? How's everyone doing too? Enjoying it? Uh, what are some of your favorite things to animate? What do you find the hardest to animate? Um, that's a really good question. Uh, Favorite things to animate. Why is everyone saying yes in the chat right now? Oh, you like the because I just asked you if you liked what was happening. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad. Can you cook? I can. Yeah, kind of. Laura's substantially better than me at cooking. She's way better. Um, why are you so cool? And can I be your friend? You can. That's my girlfriend. So yes, you can be my friend and my girlfriend. Um, lol, Laura. So my favorite thing to animate. Um, Gosh, I don't know. Actually, you know what? What I was just mentioning, like Street Fighter, super snappy types of animation. I got a client job to do that in 3D animation. I do 3D animation occasionally, not much lately. Um, and basically, I was just like putting the characters in these extreme like poses for different frames, doing multiples of their hands coming towards the camera, and that's my favorite stuff to animate, where all I have to do is focus on the poses, do some overshoot when there's impact. Um, yeah, that's probably my favorite thing because I think that I'm mostly a draftsman. Like I mostly like to draw, and so if all I'm doing all day is drawing poses or drawing poses in 3D in the computer, that's probably my favorite thing to do. I wouldn't say it's my least favorite, but I'm not as strong with really, really subtle 3D animation. I think it takes a certain kind of talent for that I don't have. I'm not sure that I'm going to pursue that anymore, so I don't know that I'll ever have it. But just the decision making between what you emphasize, what you play up, and what you leave out of really, really nice, subtle 3D animation It's just a skill that I admire so much, and I can't do it. So, is it possible to get the timing files? I'll think about it. Maybe I'll release my mage warrior as my mage person as something that you can download on Gumroad. Is that something that you would like? I can definitely do that. I hadn't thought of it, but yeah, sure. Excellent presentation. You did a great job all over the steps. I'm glad, yeah. And if there's anything else you guys want me to cover, yeah, for sure. I want that map. Yes, yes, okay. Okay, I'll consider it for sure. Insta buy. Can I see it played? Yeah, sure, sure. I did draw in one frame right here, so it will look a little janky, but I can delete that so it doesn't look so bad. Off, off. There we go. Yeah, so you can see it played for sure. Take my money. Okay. Please make the mage available. Okay, yeah, I'll consider it. That's a very good idea. That's a very good idea. Plus the timing files. I buy those two. Plus the timing files. Okay, Art of Nor. What do you mean the timing files? Like, do you mean oh, you mean all of this stuff right here? Is that what you mean? Plus the timing files? What frame rate do you normally animate in? I normally animate at 12 or 24 frames per second. 24 frames per second is the Disney animation hand-drawn sort of standard. I know that other people are animating in other things, especially in CG for films that are 60 frames per second. So it's different now, but for 2D animations, usually we're usually working at 24 on ones is what we call it, or if we're working at 12 frames per second, or on twos. That's one frame held for every one frame held for 2 frames throughout its entirety at 24 frames per second. I'm sorry, that's super confusing. Or just 12 frames per second. Yeah. Just picked up your brushes. I love the texture in these bad boys. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. So this is no longer so much of a presentation stream. It's more of a hanging out and let's talk and answer questions stream, which is I'm totally cool with. I actually like this better than being all serious and looking at my notes and stuff. What are some of your biggest artistic inspirations? For animation, since we're on animation, it's Milk Call. I have frame by framed so many of Milk Call's scenes and just clicked through and looked at those beautiful poses. Yeah, he's one of my favorite for animators. Then of course Richard Williams, animator, survival guide, kit, author. He's incredible. He does stuff that nobody else even attempts. Amazing. Artistic inspirations, I would say Oliver Jeffers for children's book illustration. I'm blanking on other names for other artistic inspirations, but there's a bunch. I really love David O'Reilly, who is an independent animator and making a bunch of Instagram filters now, and he made a beautiful game called Everything. He's one of my inspirations. I'm looking over here. I'm looking at Chris Ware, Drawn to Life, Walt Stansfield. Yeah. There's a lot, but those are the ones that come to mind. Use Toon Boom. I've never used Toon Boom. What I've used on PC is Flash, now called Adobe Animate, and I've used TV Paint, which is amazing, but it's hard to afford as an individual artist. I've used it at a studio. And what else have I used for 2D animation? I guess Rough Animator and Procreate. I've been meaning to learn Blender. If anybody has seen the grease pencil tool in Blender, it's basically 2D animation in 3D, and I study Oliver Jeffers, John Klassen, and Dan Santat for my children's books. They are all amazing. Actually, I don't know Dan Santat. I know Oliver Jeffers and John Klassen. They're amazing. Use grease pencil? Fiore Irving? That's cool. Grease pencil is sick and I want to learn it. And it's free. Blender is free. It's open source. That's amazing. Can you walk us through your exporting process? My Procreate animations come out blurry. I would rather not at the moment. I'm very sorry. My thing has been crashing when I've been exporting, so I can't do that. If you're in the Discord though, or on Instagram or whatever, shoot me a DM and I'll tell you how I do it. For sure. Do you deviate off of ones and incorporate more timings with threes, fours in the mix and those kinds of more exaggerated timings you see in anime? Oh yeah, for sure. Sometimes I hold things for four frames, 3 frames, sometimes even like 6 frames if it's appropriate. Yeah. Especially if you're doing Street Fighter type stuff, you have somebody can help me out here. There's an effect where the whole screen sort of freezes for a moment when like hits happen. Um, hit something. And those are pretty long. I think those are 6 frames or longer for those hit frames. I don't remember what they're called. There's an official name for them. But yeah, for sure. And I do a lot of that timing when I'm working in TV Paint or Adobe Animate on the computer. If I was going to do something like that on Procreate, I definitely do it um, probably on the computer first or in Rough Animator and then bring it into Procreate. Um, just uh, just to do things just a tiny bit quicker. Although it's totally possible, completely in Procreate. Dude, shout out Street Fighter. Have you tried animating in Photoshop? Yes, I have done animation in Photoshop. I feel the same way I do about Procreate, where it's something that I love to paint in. So I usually finish animations in Photoshop. Uh, I start my first day of animation school. Any advice? Um, every time people ask me for advice, I think of like 10 things at once, but I would say to shoot reference, study reference, but don't be tied to your reference. Try to do crazy stuff with poses and timing. And not for the sake of crazy stuff, but for the sake of whatever story you're telling and whatever character you're animating. Yeah. And really try to do something interesting and different with animation. Like if you're given a bouncing ball, maybe it's a ball that has personality. Maybe it's a giant boulder that just goes, like try to do something fun with your animation assignments in school. Have fun with it. Uh, People notice that kind of stuff if you're looking to become an animator. And the more good ideas you can put into your animation, the better, especially early on. Your stuff's very good, very Pixar style, but with a beautiful hand-drawn feel. Love to see a game with your art design. That would be cool. I'd love to see that too. Any game designers, hit me up. Let's do it. I'd love that. How does your brushes shift colors by every time we tap? It's in the brush settings. I can show you exactly how to do that. Yeah. So, like I said, these the color random brushes are just sort of bonus brushes. The main brushes are these. But there are color dynamics. I'm sorry, I didn't even go over this. If you click on your brush preview and then you click around, you get to color dynamics right here. And I very specifically tune this to have a stamp jitter, so it changes as you're stroking, like it just subtly. And then it changes per stroke, so you can see stroke color jitter right here. And these are the exact values I landed on that gave me just enough randomness without it being completely out of control. So yeah, you can do that yourself for any brush. So um, it's not anything super magical. Any job advice as a student for getting into the animation industry? I'm not in the animation industry. I am sort of working on the fringes of it. I'm working as in the commercial world a lot, and I'm helping develop some things that are in development for film, but not necessarily in the animation industry. So I don't know that I can answer that question so much. I do know that in general, it's good to have good storytelling skills and a really strong sense of style if you're a biz dev artist, and really strong animation fundamentals if you're an animator. Um, Make good choices and tell good stories as an animator. That's probably top of the list. Make good choices, tell good stories. I've heard this at lectures for animation all the time when I went to CTN a bunch, when I was more interested in 3D character animation. What they said in almost every talk that I went to is at a studio, they can teach you polish. They can teach you how to polish your shots. what they can't teach you is good ideas. So you need to try and you need to figure out. I believe that everybody already has good ideas, right? And so no one needs to teach that. That's innate. It's just a matter of being able to translate it into art. So being able to visually communicate your good ideas in animation is actually pretty challenging. But if you can do it, if you can figure it out, it's sort of like a pursuit. It's a skill. It's something you have to practice. And you could show that in your portfolio. I think that that's really what animation studios might be looking for, at least from my outside perspective. So please take that with a grain of salt. How do you stay on model for cleanup? Like, should I do multiple passes, then go in for cleanup? That's a good question. I just finished up a job where it had to be very, very on model, and the lines were like super thin and super clean, and everything was like clean. Like I couldn't do any of this kind of stuff where there were fuzzy edges. And what I did is I would actually trace over, and Milk Call did this too. There's I don't remember where I read it or where I saw it in footage or in an interview, but Milk Call would trace over the model sheets. So if you have a model sheet, draw over it. Like if you're doing it in Flash, in TV Paint, in Procreate, in Rough Animator, whatever, bring in your model sheet as a reference and actually draw over the model sheet and use those as your drawings in the animation. Somebody already designed a beautiful model sheet. If you can get those poses or your variations of those poses on the screen, then you're taking the best of what a designer did and combining it with the best of what an animator can do. So yeah, that's what I'd say about staying on model. Where to find your tutorials from the stream? I don't have any tutorials out there yet. But this talk has made me think that I should put some stuff out. How'd you manage to make a perfect loop of that forest in Maya? Here, I'll open up that video and maybe I can explain it a little better. So I'm glad that there's still questions. I thought that, wait, this is the wrong one. I thought that perhaps, can I zoom in on this at all? No, not really. I thought that maybe I'd run out of stuff to talk about. Okay, so I need to pause this like carefully and just kind of scrub. So the way I got it to loop perfectly in Maya is math, which is no one wants to hear that, right? So basically, you can see that. Let me bring my mouse out to point over the top of this. Hold on, technical difficulties. Okay. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Oh, okay. Well, let me connect my screen once more. Okay, cool, it's back. Nice. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this tree right here, can you see my mouse hovering over that? Let me just make sure. Actually, you can't see anything. That's unfortunate. Okay. All right, let me just make sure you can see. So you can see, okay, I'm pointing to this tree right here, right? You can see my mouse right there. So I have a limited number of frames, which is 24 frames. So when my mouse is over this tree, when we get, let me get to the beginning. I'll put my mouse over this tree. When we get to frame 24, or actually frame 25, since that's the loop point, we want that tree to be in the exact same place, right? So let's go to frame 25. There we are. It's in the same exact place, literally the same place. And the way you do that is the amount of distance that you take, that you move the tree back in space, is also the amount of distance that your camera moves back or moves forward. So if it's 100 units, let's say 100 feet, your camera has to move 100 feet as well. He's clearly not looking at the chat. What's going on in chat? Sneak up on him? What are you guys doing? I'm on the move, gonna slither into his room like a snake. Lara, what are you doing? Greatest mod. I agree, she's the greatest mod. I'm gonna do it. Lara, I know you're gonna do it now. She's exposed. Okay. Hey, the sin. What the fuck? actually just scared me on my stream. Thank you. I even knew it was coming. I didn't know you were gonna jump out though. Okay.
There's a question that someone had about school.
There's a question that someone had about
like
school?
Tori something.
What was the question about school?
I'll find it and I'll send it.
You send it? Was it about starting animation school? Because I answered that one. Stop. Okay, quality content. Yeah. I felt my heart leap out of my chest. She actually does that all the time. She tries to scare me, and it usually doesn't work. But she giggles about it. Like she laughs so much after she'll jump out, and I'll be like and she'll just start laughing a bunch. And then of course if I scare her, she's like, "Why would you do that?" So. How would you go about animating something with a sudden, sharp impact, like a punch? You know what? I could probably do a little demo of that. I say that, but this could be terrible. So let's make a new canvas. I think for something sharp, the most important thing is that you have anticipation and you have overshoot. Animation assist. So let's draw a boxer or something, right? Someone's saying no. I don't want to get jump scared. I hate that. Perhaps a little out there, but your thoughts on going to school. Would you recommend online, private school? Like no, I'm gonna brainstorm. Absolutely. I would say look at the cost and look at what you're getting. So boxes are usually like this, right? Kind of like this. And I didn't go into posing at all, but I definitely, okay, so it can be like this. So they're kind of next to each other. Maybe we do something like this. There's a little bit of, maybe, I'm trying to make up poses on the fly. This is not good. So this is going to be ugly, right? Maybe I'll just give him one hand for now. So I'll just do the upper torso too. Okay. So maybe this is where he starts, right? So the poses you want to emphasize for something that's sharp is, let's say this is a neutral pose. Next pose is going to be his wind up. So let's say, let me act it out really quick. He's going to lean back a little bit, right? This is called the anticipation pose. The more anticipation you have, the more impactful your movement is going to be. So that looks, wait, wrong hand. So something kind of like this, maybe put the fist here, and then draw something like that, and then maybe this hand comes out like straight, like, I don't know why, I just feel like I would do that. And then maybe he even moves back, green left a little bit, right? And then let's say this is our A pose, this is our start. I'll make him stand up a little bit, better posture. So this is our start pose right here. This is our, a little too big now. This is our antic or anticipation pose. And then we're gonna do the pose where he settles, right? And let me throw a punch. It's ugly because I don't know how to punch. So I think maybe leaning his head in a little bit and just a straight line all the way across. So we want something like this. And if you want something forceful, you want to make your pose have straight lines in general. So something like this. Maybe, what would you do with this hand? You can tell I don't know how to fight, right? I would actually shoot reference for this. So maybe this hand comes up over here, right? That looks a little bit weak, but I'm gonna go with it even though it's kind of bad. So this is my B pose, right? This is my A pose. This is my B pose. What you want to do to have a lot of impact is take your B pose and push it further. You can even make the fist bigger for more impact. You can make him lean even further for more impact. Maybe his arm flies back. This is going to look like he's jousting or something. Maybe that won't be good. But so the order of things is we're going to, I'll make a background layer really quick. Click on this. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Background layer. So the order of things here is we have our background layer. We're going to have A pose to antic to overshoot to B pose. And we're going to set this to 12 frames per second because it's on 2s, I guess. Although, no, I'm going to do 24. I'll just make it on 2s, actually. 24 frames per second. Bear with me, please. So we're going to hold this for 1 frame. The anticipation we're going to hold for a lot of frames. So I'm going to say 5 frames. This is very fast, and then we're going to sit here for a minute. All right, let's see how that looks. Hopefully it doesn't look bad. It's not the worst animation I've ever done. But that 1 frame that's overshooting, and actually I'm going to make more anticipation. I'm going to say, I'm going to change this to have 3 frame hold, and then I'm going to duplicate it and take my anticipation even further. So let's erase this. Take my anticipation even further just by doing this. And maybe redrawing the hand a little bit. So he's winding up even further. Let's see how that plays. So I would want to shorten that first antic. Anyways, you get the picture, or maybe you don't, and this is awful. But so the impact really comes from the anticipation, and the longer we make the anticipation, I think, the more impact we're going to feel. Okay, change this to 3. Maybe change this to 5. Right? Yeah, so that feels like a good wind up. Obviously, I'd want to in between that, make more breakdowns and stuff. But you can see that the part where he overshoots is you get all the impact there. That wasn't the best animation, you know. I did pretty good. Would you say parallax animation is one of the hardest to do natively from scratch in Procreate? If not, how would you tackle it? Yeah, I wouldn't try and figure that all out in your head in Procreate. That's why I ended up using CG. I actually did try to draw. I don't know if Max is still in the chat, but I had this idea to make this girl walking through the woods when I was hanging out with him. And we were sitting at a coffee shop, and I was trying to draw the background frame by frame. And I think I spent like 3-4 hours on it. And then I was like, no, I haven't even touched the character yet. This is a waste of time. I'm just going to do it in 3D. So it is possible. It's just, what's up, Max? It is possible. I would just say, yeah, it is very hard to do mechanical animation that's mechanical. So the foreground layer is moving at a certain speed on even spacing. The background layer is moving at a certain speed on even spacing. The super foreground, like the extreme foreground, is moving forward at a certain mechanical spacing. So I would say that, yeah, like Franklin's saying, yeah, I started in Flash, and it's easy to do it there. But I figured if I'm on the go, it was tedious. Yeah, I would say that is something that would be a little more difficult to do in Procreate if you try to do it exclusively. That said, though, if you were going to paint that background that you already figured out, I would 100% do that in Procreate because you got all your cool brushes. You could do it with Max's brushes. Did you learn 3D animation before 2D? I did. Okay, I have a weird path. I learned After Effects animation, like After Effects. Motion graphics animation, like After Effects. And then I taught myself 3D, like basic 3D, generalist 3D. And then I took animation courses. iAnimate, Nomen is where I went as well. And then I taught myself 2D animation from books and stuff. So it was definitely so backwards learning that way. But is Maya on your iPad? No, that was a video that was playing earlier. Maya's on my PC. That was cool. I gotta check out animation. Cool. Okay, so I think the questions are starting to settle down, and I would say maybe one more question, then I'll just end this right here. I'll have my mage girl floating someone mentioned a video game. That's totally what I was thinking about when I was animating her. I was like, I want to play this video game. Which Max Pack is the best? The retro Max Pack is amazing. Go check that one out. What are your book recommendations for learning 2D? Animator Survival Kit is number one. I would recommend The Illusion of Life as well, just to have the context for where Western animation rose from, like why we're doing the things that we're doing. It's so helpful to read that book as well. I think it's a little less nuts and bolts than the Animator Survival Kit, but there's still very concrete stuff in there. Do you animate without a character rev? So hard to stand model. No, I always have a reference. I'll usually do a design if I'm doing something. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you everybody for coming by. If you want to support me, you can check out my book or my brushes. I'm selling an art book. I'm selling Procreate brushes for $1 just for the duration of Lightbox Expo. That discount, the $1. I also have a picture book out. It's called Picture Book by Dog. It's sort of something that emphasizes the bond that humans and dogs can have, and it's a story that's about empathy. And it's my first ever picture book, and I'm very proud of it. So I would love it if you guys could check that out. You can do all the social media stuff too. You can follow me on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube. You know, all that stuff people say when they're trying to plug their stuff. I really appreciate all that stuff, and I'd love to stay connected. I never had a Discord before, but I made one for Lightbox, and that has been so much fun. Connecting with all these people and just chatting, sharing jokes, sharing artwork, sharing like links to things, and we even have a fitness channel now. We're talking about different fitness things to do during quarantine, so that's super fun. Once again, huge shout out to Lightbox. None of this stuff would have happened, and it's been such an amazing weekend. And I feel I'm leaving this so inspired. Yeah, so Lightbox, thank you everybody who worked to put on Lightbox. And people are asking for the Discord link, so I'll throw that in here. This is the Discord. Wait, I didn't copy it. My bad. Go. Y'all are goat for showing up for Michael and learning from him. You guys are the best. I really appreciate everybody coming to the stream over the whole weekend. This is my last stream. I'm gonna take it a little easy now. I'm gonna watch whatever panels are left. Maybe if there's a Zoom hangout to like have a drink or post, I might do that. I don't know. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. I'm signing off now. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your Lightbox. I hope it was great up until this point. Take care, everybody. Bye. Can we watch House of Cards now? Yeah. For sure, for sure. Bye.